Hey there, Shopping Maniacs. We got a brand new intro for you here. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go.
Hey there, Shopper Maniacs. You are listening to another episode of the Shop Talk Show with your hosts, Dave Rupert and Chris Coyer.
Yeah.
We got David Darns on the show today, who is a very famous web personality, only shadowed in fame by his own father, who did the intro for this show. Incredible.
I think we were saying before the show, does your dad know he's a micro celebrity in the web industry?
Yeah, I'm afraid he's a little bit aware. And
no.
no, he's a modest man. He's a modest man. He enjoys doing voiceovers, so he's available for work if you want to get in touch.
Good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll get him hired out. Birthday greetings.
Do my ringtone for sure.
Oh, or like ring doorbell. Like.
Yeah. Who's there?
The package arrives.
Yeah. Put it on the doorstep.
Yeah. Elongation.
I just remembered. I got my mother-in-law to do it, and that's what comes up when she rings me. So it's just her yelling my name on my phone, and I always forget. But it's fantastic.
Oh man, I should do that more often. Yeah, that'd be great. Just like have whoever's calling you give you a ringtone, like a custom. Just say my name in your voice or however you want it to sound. That's great.
It is great.
In Texas, we have a lot of like David, David, stuff like that. Yeah.
Again, we have David Darns on the show. If you wanna hear another little taste of that, go to David's personal website, darn.es. There's a little microphone in the header. You can hear it, which is just one of the best buttons on the whole internet, if you ask me. Also created from a web component. So just because of that, why don't we talk about web components for an hour?
Heck yeah.
Just kidding. I don't know. We'll get there. I'm sure we'll talk about all kinds of stuff because David has a lot of experience in design systems as well. Currently at Shopify, right? Do I have that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And then previously Nordhealth, Zero Height, Ghost, all kinds of stuff. You don't even need a portfolio, really. You're the icons on your homepage are. That's a smoking set icon.
Yeah, I'm very privileged to have those bunch of SVGs dropped into the page. Yeah.
Humblebrag.svg. Ooh.
Yeah.
Nice.
Like a CDN.
I always call it a NASCAR SVG. You know, it's just all the logos on your.
Yeah. I actually have one of the. I have a Red Bull F1 jacket.
Okay,
and it's cool looking. I get complimented it on all the time, but it's strange to me, because the companies aren't even that cool, and it's like, why is wearing a bunch of ads look cool? I agree, it kind of does, but it's like ExxonMobil and even some like weird crypto companies that don't even exist anymore, and it's only like a 2-year-old jacket and stuff. It's it should be cringy, but it somehow crosses over into cool.
Yeah.
Not sure
Have
how
you
that
seen
works.
there's Lego racing cars, and all the Lego sets are like 7+, except for the Red Bull one. It's 18+, because they can't promote energy drinks to children under 18, so they have to make the set 18+ legally, even though it's like for 7+ kids. Yeah.
That's funny.
Didn't realize.
That's like the economy of illegal or illicit beverages for kids. Yeah.
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 Right as Red Bull's starting to lose their shine a little bit in F1, Could be interesting next year with Lewis changing teams and stuff. All right. Anyway, who are you, David? We got to do that. We didn't even do it at all. I'm sure some people are going to know and some people won't. You do you. Give us the 1 minute. Who's David?
So I am a web developer. I've been doing this stuff for 15 years now. I did do a bit of college and uni, so I suppose like nearly 20 years, but like started in design, doing agency work, and then, like you said, more into product companies, doing combination of front-end dev, advocacy, and more recently like design system stuff, which is now become my niche and a very enjoyable part of the industry for me.
Enjoyable, that's a good word too. And I think we can probably stay there for a while because Dave has a ton of experience in it too, right? You did design system work at Paravel, and then you did it for
doing it right now.
you made a product around it, and now you're at Microsoft and you're doing it. So you all have a lot of design system stuff. I'm fascinated by it, of course. And don't you have a website around it too? Let's not wait till the end to do it. Isn't it designsystems.wtf or something?
That's the one, yeah. I bought that domain on a whim, and it's been a fun little side project to like just write about stuff and like sharing things, like just a little blog.
Nice.
Blogs are cool.
Well, so you worked at Nordhealth, right? That's kind of like, I think that's what I associate with you maybe the most, or maybe when we first started talking. But Nordhealth is unique, I feel like, because it's one of those design systems that people always cite. They're always like, this is best of class design system. I know like you and Ariel and everyone who's kind of worked on it over the years, like put a lot of effort into it. Nikki, right? Like put a lot of effort into it. And I would just kind of like to hear more about that. Just, you know, you're competing with like Material, you know, you're in the same echelon as like those sort of design systems, but it was just kind of a small team for what is essentially a Scandinavian health company, right? Like, so what, how'd that happen?
Firstly, like, thanks. So it's really nice to like be rubbing shoulders with those kinds of design systems. Like, really admire those like big projects and what they have to cover as well. So like the whole thing kind of came about from I would blame Ariel for it. She's a lot of the experience I've accumulated has been gleaned from her, and she acted as like chief design officer at Nordhealth, and the instigation was to like, we need like consistency. We need a good design system, a good like basis for design and development. And that's how Nord like came about. And through her experience from design systems work at previous companies, as well as help from Nick Williams and Eric and Elwin and myself, we all like come together to like work on Nord and produce something that frankly like we were really like proud of. We're really proud of it, and like I kind of get a bit like goosepimply right now because it was like a perfect storm, really, because not only was like the work that we were doing was really good, we all got along as well, and I feel like that kind of shone through in the work, so it's really cool.
Yeah, that rules. It really is an impressive piece of work. So, you know, the people can see some part of the iceberg, I guess. If you go to nordhealth.design, you see all kinds of stuff. You know, you see documentation and you see components that you can explore. To me, that's always the fun part. I'm like, where's the components, you know? But of course, it's always more than that. It's the tokens, and then writing about it too, how you're expected to use it, how you can use it, and all that kind of thing. I am a little curious. Is it one of those design systems? I don't know. My brain is so hung up on this. Is it designed for Nord to use internally at Nord only, or is it like on NPM or whatever, and people can grab it? And if you want to make a website using it, you could as well.
It is internal. Like, we had the documentation deliberately public for two reasons, or two core reasons. One, to make it searchable, to make it findable. You know, if you Google it, then you know it's going to just turn up as like, even if you're part of the company and you Google something about components, our stuff's going to come up. The other thing is like a promotional feature. Like, me being a product of that actually is like when Ariel like contacted me like, would you like to join the team and stuff, I checked out the design system. I was like, holy smokes, like this is amazing. Like, I would love to contribute to this and like add to it. And I think design systems, that's the secret source or secret like adjacent power to design systems, is that it's a little bit of a promotional thing to show this is how much we care about design and development.
Right.
So yeah, it fundamentally, like the NPM packages are private and they get installed into the various products at Nordhealth.
I mean, they say that about open source too. They're like, so one of the reasons that companies open source stuff is so they have this really publicly demonstratable example of the quality of their stuff, or even if you're a customer, but you're a developer customer of a developer product, if you can see their open source work, you might be, extra compelled to be a customer because you're impressed or whatever. Well, what's designs and UX's version of that? Maybe it's this.
Yeah.
So that's cool. Did it work? Can you tell? Did you hire anybody because they were like, I need to work on that design system. That looks sweet.
Well, I mean, just myself. Like, I don't know about the others.
Heck yeah, it worked.
yeah.
It worked once, and that's all it needed to. Yeah.
It works on my machine.
Yeah. Well,
that rules.
Like there was one case study y'all did that it was actually about like a veterinary clinic that was connected to Nordhealth, I think, and I thought that was cool because it broke from like the blues and went to like a purpley color, if I recall correctly. Yep. And it was, so the theming is kind of showing through. But what I thought was cool was, it sort of shows the power of design systems. Like a veterinary clinic is, also takes in patients. They're just cats and dogs and giraffes and elephants or whatever. And then, but sort of process tool wise, it's sort of the same components, and you just repurpose them and then build something different, right? Maybe pets have owners, and that is a different data field in the system, so it's different. It's a different application, but it's like the same sort of thing, right? Like, it just showed like the power of it. And like, a veterinary clinic, I understand a hospital needing a design system, but I don't think like the veterinary clinic needs a design system. But it's cool that it was able to repurpose and be used in a totally, adjacent but different context, right?
Yeah, well, the interesting thing, and forgive me, I am going to segue towards web components, because the design system is built using web components, and we had a forethought of building it in such a way that it's very low level, very base level. Like you're thinking about even just markup, like inputs and text areas and things like that. And that's how we thought of Nord, as like a very low level like component system that could be applied in a number of different ways. And when you think that low level, you're not far off of HTML and markup. Like you're providing, and I'm going to steal your quote, a HTML with superpowers, like that kind of like extra layer of feature enrichment. And then you share that with the team, and they can apply that in a variety of ways, whether that be for a veterinary service or a healthcare therapy, things like that. Like and it gets more and more broad. Like you do water it down at the same time, but like you are saving huge number of hours and people effort to produce already what is hopefully a high quality interface.
Yeah, so it's going out to, right, like at different tech stacks. I know like Vue was in the mix, right? But like,
so we had like a number of like different ages. We had a full stack of monolith project that was over a decade old. And then we also had a Nux application that hadn't even been launched yet. This was at the time that I was there, and we were able to create a level of parity that, it was quite hard to tell the difference sometimes, other than like it was faster. It was faster in the Nux application, and you could produce a consistent like UI between the two. And like I said, it was in one of my my web components talk that I have a slide where it's two videos of like the UI, and it looks like the same UI, but actually one's on a decade old like stack, and the other one is on a brand new Nuxt application stack, and they look identical. And not only that, you could resize the sidebar and it would keep up to date with each other, and it gave that impression to people that this is the same application, but it's an entirely different stack.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a banger slide, man. I would
Yeah,
stand up
felt
and
good.
clap probably. I bet you.
Yeah, that's like the ultimate like sleight of hand magic trick. Just like check this out, they're different. Blah, you know, like
yeah.
It's the same picture meme.
yeah. What's different? Yeah.
Yeah, nothing. It also seems like I know it's true, and I don't, I haven't worked at 100 companies, so I don't know. But it did seem a little theoretical that that's what you buy when you go down the web components path. Is it works across everywhere. When your stack changes, it doesn't force you to change the stack of the design system like it would if you made only Vue components or only React components or whatever. And it's cool to see like straight up big business reality having that happen, like we can understand that might be what happens, or that seems theoretically like a good idea, but it's like, nope, it was a good idea. Here you go. Hell yeah.
It's almost like a kind of a gift to like experience that and see that like in the works. Like you go, well, we picked web components because in theory that should apply across like applications, and seeing it and actually being able to drop those components in the same context and just wire it up differently, whether that's like a templating language or React components or Vue components. It was like, oh, okay, this works. This really does work.
Wow. Yeah, snippet this and send it to my colleagues. That's great. At my big company, all 220,000 of them.
Stick
They
it on
won't
YouTube,
mind.
maybe.
Yeah, they won't mind, right? Yeah. I'll just email everyone. Email all. No, it's cool to see that kind of dream come alive. It is this like, I do think there's this really interesting power of having, because you had a Nuxt app, right? Like you could have written Vue components, right? Translated them all into Vue, and it would have been great, marvelous, functional, but that whatever old legacy app wouldn't have gotten modernized as quickly if you hadn't chosen web components, and so in some way that like having the third heat of web components in the mix, like the old legacy backend, the new stuff, and then like web components, means like both of these experiences can upgrade without touching the stack. Like that stack doesn't have to go to Nuxt 3 or whatever. They can both just upgrade,
Yeah, and we took that principle really like deep. We leveraged custom properties, like try to make them evolutionary, but like you could effectively make them more powerful without anybody touching anything other than like the package JSON like installation update, and it meant that we could intravenously add in features and add in quality through the design system as intended, as it's designed to do. I can't remember what I was going to say now about like framework choices, but I don't. For other companies, I don't think it's a bad idea to like pick React, especially if React's like everywhere in the entire company. It's very hard to argue using web components. However, in a climate where this might be not the de facto framework, or you might not pick it in 10 years time or 5 years time.
Or React 18 and 19 are soups different.
Yeah. You see, like the upgrade
kind of
path is
are.
like clunky. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, in some ways, that's React 18 or React 19 like changing is might be web components' fault for the props and attributes. Like
It's the biggest
deal.
grift
Right.
ever.
Yeah.
The biggest
Also,
heist.
is that prop types are gone in 19. So, at one point, I remember taking like a week and adding it just really just it was like pre-Copilot and stuff, just handwriting prop types for just like hundreds of components. Prop types are these things that say like, oh, this component takes in like a title, which is a string, but it also takes in like, featured, which is a Boolean and whatever. And you just write it out by hand, this object that explains it. And then what it does is runtime, if it gets data that's not matching one of those types, you get an error. And it's just a little like runtime way to make sure that your data is like in decent shape. And then this version of React just said like, no, we just start pulling that from React entirely. So it's you can't have them anymore, which is just wild to me. But also like it's just became out of fashion to do it that way. It's more fashionable to just write TypeScript and then you get the TypeScript checking anyway. But TypeScript isn't runtime, so it's not a one-to-one replacement. And then like just use Zod, and it's this whole like that's a lot of runaround, kids.
See, in this situation, web components possibly never updating is awesome.
It's again why I picked like vanilla JavaScript for my open source projects. Like I just wanted to keep it as rudimentary as possible.
Right.
Maybe that's a reflection of how I think about code, is that I'm not particularly quick off the mark on like compiling things using this, that, and the other. I wanted to write something that you could like copy and paste into a page.
Yeah. I'm a programmer every day of my life, like even in my fun time. And like the thought of writing JavaScript just kills me. That says a lot, right? It's just like, It's what I do for a living. It's what I do for fun. And I will still go, oh, I don't want to do all that. But, so you mentioned your open source. You have, so we should say you came and pitched in on the Awesome Standalones project that I was poorly running and made it better, got some new components in there and built
Awesome
this cool
standalone web components, we should say, right? So they're
awesome
the idea is that
web components.
They're these little components that any project could just grab and use is the idea. Just a tremendous idea.
Yeah, just like pick up, drop in your page. Sometimes it's like math. Sometimes it's a 3D model. Sometimes it's a fart button or whatever, right? The different, like whatever people want. And you built this cool like 11D backend that spits out a markdown README. It's kind of like the opposite 11D. It's good.
The name should be it backwards. Like I can't even say it now.
Yeah.
Nah.
11 ye.
Yeah,
it feels like 11 me.
Feels like I'm cussing in a language I don't know, like a Croatian or something.
So instead of taking like data and producing pages, it takes pages and produces data or something.
Markdown. Yeah.
Like it just churns out the README. Like I wanted a way to make it very formatted and organized, and not only that, like produce a little cheeky API for people to suck their data into like whatever website they might want to do.
Yeah. Anyway, so thanks for doing that. But you have standalone components yourself. You're a purveyor of standalone components. You have quite a few, like, I don't know, like Blue Sky comments and things like that. And what I think is unique about yours, your component sort of style, is you actually take a way more HTML forward approach, probably the most HTML forward approach, where you're kind of like, bring your own template. Like, I have one here, but like bring your own template and just make sure it has these like data attribute hooks, and then I'll fill it with data, right? That's kind of like, I don't know, that's the vibe, right? Like maybe talk about like why you go that route instead of the full Shadow DOM life.
Well, I had my fair share of Shadow DOM in Node. Like we needed that isolation to be able to create a component that would be so robust that no one could mess it up in that way. But at the same time, you lose the compatibility. You lose the like progressive enhancement experience. You don't kind of be able to enhance it at every step of the way, and that's why I was going for with my open source web components. I mean, the main goal was for me to learn. Like I still didn't really fully understand all of the APIs within web components, and doing that, I learned so much and worked out how everything can work together. And one of the biggest ones was that web components don't have to have Shadow DOM. It's not like they're not interconnected directly. It is a feature that is kind of as part of a subset of features of web components. The web components is an umbrella like terminology for it all. And I wanted to create something that was very markup forward and like very like simplistic, and that it just give you a bit of JavaScript to like sprinkle on top and enhance those elements on the page. One of them is like on my website where you can click a button and it plays the audio. Nice and simple, just enhances that experience, and the fallback would be just the audio element playing as is. And the same for the others. And I made it so there's a way to like produce, or like you can control the markup. So you can do that through templating, or you can put the markup like directly into the web component and like customize for your needs. Just in the same way that like embeds work, where people can embed like a video or something, and you can control the way it's presented depending on what attributes and nested elements you put into there. And web components is really good at that. It's like a iframe 2.0. You can do like so much more and create something a lot more performant and a lot more catered that fits into like a website that you're dropping it into.
Fascinating. I got one for both of you. That Dave, you're saying one of the ways that you can have some HTML that's going to be used by the web component, because of course that's the final output and that's what we all care about, but it needs to be based on something, is to have literally an angle brackets template tag in HTML. And you say, here's my template. The web component will like find it and then use it. Great. Another way is that got popular kind of more called HTML web components, where you put a lot of that stuff inside your web component, like your angle bracket my dash web component. You put a bunch of HTML in there that either like gets used or augmented or something, right? It's kind of a cool way. And then there's another way, and again, Shadow DOM or not, where the JavaScript is like, or the HTML is kind of inside the JavaScript, probably in a template literal that gets rendered. And I think it can be all of the above, perhaps, any mix and match any of those things to be used. But I wonder if you have like a preference or a muscle memory for one particular way of doing it or something. So it occurs to me with awesome standalones that it's harder to call it a standalone if it requires a template elsewhere in the HTML. It's not as easy as, just load this JavaScript file and go. Anyway.
Yeah, I think there's use cases for, and correct me, Dave, like there's particular like use cases for those different like strategies. Like a web component that comes bundled with all of that markup inside of it is really good in a situation of like a design system where you actually produce the markup as like a package in itself and you deliver that as one big chunk. Whereas something that enhances the content on the page, you probably want markup inside the element and then enhancements with JavaScript. And then another way to customize it, I felt the most appropriate was if you're editing markup, then it should probably live in the markup. Like I like template strings inside of JavaScript. It's really cool and useful, but like it feels a bit strange already. It doesn't seem like right. I know there's needs for it. I'm not knocking it because I do it, but I feel like there's appropriate places for those to reside. But I'd be interested in what you think, Dave.
No, I think what's neat about web components is it's like all three of those paths you described, and there's maybe even like two more I could like think of, but like those are all valid paths, like, and it's like, that's awesome. There's even like one where you do declarative Shadow DOM, which is a template tag inside of the angle bracket my element. And then you like, that's your template. Yeah. And so that's like kind of like the server rendered path, and so like you can basically like chuck it into there. I think like when you get into like, you need that isolation, like blue sky comments that need to look like my website. I probably want David's way, right? Where it's like, no, I know how to do a template. I just need you to hit the API and give me a JSON back and then loop, right? That's what I'm asking you to do. But when you loop, use this template here. That I feel like is a great use case for like, let me do the template, dude, because I know what I'm doing. It's my website. Otherwise, you end up with the shelled, like the encapsulated, the shadow web component, you end up with Discus or, and that's like, that was not so great because I don't know. They also chucked in like adware and ad tracking, so that was not great. But you think of something like a Twitter card or even like a CodePen embed, right? Like, which you maybe have a CodePen one, but but you don't necessarily, like, if it's first party, like, or if it's CodePen made, like, you don't necessarily want people futzing with the CodePen layout, because you're like, hey, we've sort of ran into all the issues here, and here's what you need. You need the 3 buttons, HTML, or 4 buttons, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, result, and all of those can toggle on and off. We thought about all this, and then, but we give you ways to skin it, color it, you know. The Twitter embed, where it's kind of like, this is the canonical resource. It looks very Twittery, and it always has to be on brand. Like, that would be a great web, you know, Shadow DOM web component. But, you know, I guess, like, you know, those are extreme
it's so hard to
examples.
think about.
But yeah, I mean,
They kind of are, but you know that's why the iframe, it feels like the easy dev choice, because you're like, you just can't mess with it. It's not possible for the CSS to come in. Whereas even with Shadow DOM, it's like you still have to be a little protective, because font family is gonna come right through, baby. You know,
I had
so
that
you gotta-
issue yesterday. It was like, it was just like, who, you know, there's an ID tag that was setting the font to like a serif, and I was just like, who is doing this, and how do I make you stop?
It busted
like,
through the Shadow DOM wall and was like, oh yeah.
Well, no,
Comic Sans.
It was like only like H1s inside the Shadow DOM or whatever, and I just was like, what?
Right.
Who's doing this? You know, but figured it out. Wrote a nice little not selector to fix it.
Did
but
you?
yeah,
It's
well-
something to me to use that kind of all unset or whatever, which is like, okay,
all unset is pretty murderous. Yeah, that's good.
pretty murderous. You know, if I feel like if I was starting from scratch, I would use that for sure. But like, I don't want nothing from the outside, but I don't want an iframe either. I don't know. I would do that.
No, that's actually probably pretty smart. I probably do need to use all unset, but there's also like, it could be an inline thing. That's where it gets a little tricky, but but anyway, it was so I think there's like different routes. I think that's where web components sort of have a problem. Just the uniformity, like React components have a very uniform model, even though they change it every 4 years. It has a very uniform model, right? Like, it's a function now, used to be a class, now it's a function, and it has an effect in it somewhere, right? Pretty uniform model, right?
Probably.
Web components, I don't know, man. You know, template.
But isn't it your
who
general
knows?
opinion that we should use something? We should use a library, which, because they're generally pretty small and it's a good bang for your buck. That is what can impart the structure.
I guess technology is like it's very broad anyway. Like React is opinionated. I find it ironic. A lot of people say unopinionated for various frameworks and that, and it doesn't make sense to me, because framework by some people by nature is opinionated, right? It can't be unopinionated. Your opinion, your perspective is going to implant into that framework. And
it's super opinionated unless you want it, unless you wish it was more opinionated, you know?
Yeah.
Like it says it's super opinionated about how hooks work and how they have to be placed and stuff, but then has no opinion about how you style anything. And you're like, you should have maybe helped with that.
Yeah.
Like,
and if you want to deploy it, you got to use Guillermo's opinions, you know? Like, it's just like sort of a, you know?
but web components, it's so broad, which is a detriment to it, because it's very hard to sell it. You don't have a piece, you go,
No, I get asked probably every week or 2 weeks, like, how should I deploy web components? Like, what framework, you know? And I'm like, Astro? Like PHP? Like, it's really kind of like, I don't have like, boom, Guillermo's thing. Like, I don't have like
I know. I've said that too.
Answer,
We're waiting for the next of web components. And it's already, I think there was less incentive to do it before there was declared a Shadow DOM. And now that there is, it's begging for it.
Yeah.
Somebody do.
It'd be nice. But, you know, so like, there are like back to the framework, like if you go with Lit, if you go with, I think any of them, they're going to nudge you into the open. We didn't even talk about open and closed Shadow DOMs, but it's going to nudge you into the open Shadow DOM template system by default. Even Fast will do that. which is the framework I use at work. But it'll, you know, I think there's like, you know, there's ways out of it. Everyone gives you a way out of it, but it's sort of just the default. Like, well, if you chose web components, you probably want this encapsulation and things like that. So that's kind of how frameworks approach it. So,
you know, I just realized I should be making my pitch to sell Chris the CodePen web component right here, right now. Like,
do a Shark Tank style.
yeah.
Okay, sharks.
Yeah, I remember looking at it, right? And it's tricky because it doesn't, like, it was, I think there's bones to a good idea. I'm not saying your idea is bad. It's just like it doesn't buy a hell of a lot over what we already did.
I'm kidding. Like, in fact, Miriam did an even better job with like actual previews and stuff inside of it. It was just something because it reminded me, back on Nord, we had like an opening CodePen like button, which was really handy because we would just open every web component in CodePen and then start editing it. And
I showed our team this week because we knew we were talking to you and about this, and I was like, I kind of forgot about that, or maybe never knew. But yeah, that's a beautiful button to see there, and it works great. It works flawlessly. Yeah, and that uses CodePen's prefill API, so you know you can post to a particular URL on CodePen with the code and settings and stuff that you want, and it just pre-fills a pen. It's not saved, but it's just a starter. It's a way to kind of start from a template. Yeah, that's really nice feature. I had to rewrite it because we're working on the new version of CodePen, and the new version of CodePen. One of the features of it is that it just accepts files. You know, like it's not just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript.
Oh, nice.
It's like whatever. You know, what path is that file at? But it needs to support the legacy stuff too, right? So that whatever you're doing is unaffected by it. So now it's like if you pass in just in the JSON data that you give us, just HTML, it's just be like, oh, okay, you probably mean index.html. You know, it has to make some kind of smart choices about what the defaults are, and then rewritten in a different language and tested and all this stuff. It's been a massive project. It's all little stuff like that. Why it's taking us so long to get out is that you're like, oh, remember this little API we have that isn't exactly top of mind every day, but here's, you know, this world famous design system who uses the heck out of that feature. It's sitting right there on their live public website, you know. To me, it's like it's not a choice where we can be like, let's ship it anyway. We'll fix that API later. It's like, no, we will fix it before launch. And anyway, we got started talking about embeds, and embeds have prefill too. So like that's a nice feature. A web component you could invent an API that somehow expresses a file and what content that should have. Maybe it should be JSON data as an attribute, or maybe there's some more interesting HTML way to express that has a fallback. You know, you could use pre-tags with attributes on it or something, and then have it enhance up into a prefill embed. That would be super neat. And if we were going to make a web component for CodePen and ship it publicly, it would support all of our embed features, the editable ones, the prefill ones, the regular ones, all the different themes, setting the height. You know, I would make sure that it supports every feature that we as a company support, and we'd have to make some tricky choices.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for the allowed rant there. Pretty interesting. I see on Nord too that it was generally like the card component, for example. You just put whatever inside the card and then it gets wrapped in a card or something. So sometimes it's kind of HTML-y, but then you have like a date picker, for example, and there's nothing inside the web component. It's all controlled via like attributes on itself, where you could have made the choice. They're like, well, if you're going to use the date picker, you have to put an input of type date inside. That way, if the JavaScript doesn't run, at least you still have an input of type date or whatever. Those are the kind of interesting choices I think are with web components that are tricky.
Well, it's interesting we forget that there's the whole slots feature, which I think is brilliant. I really like that. And we made use of that quite a lot inside of the input component and a few other places. And what we did is we followed the syntax of logical properties. So if you wanted to put an icon at the start or the left side, shall we say, for left-handed left to right writing, you put an icon at the start of the input, then you'd use the start slot, and then there would be the end slot. And then I suppose you could then have block start and block end as well, and be able to slot the elements into where you want them in the input or inside the card. That's how we did it in card. Like there's a header and footer, but then you might have a start and an end. And then the same for like even more complex components like the layout and like the navigation and search and stuff like that. We would allow people to put whatever markup they like in there, and then use the slot features to like slide it into the places it should be. I mean, and you'll know this, Dave, is like the slot selectors start getting a little bit painful. Like you can't get deep into those selectors.
Yeah, only one level deep. Like,
yeah, it's quite
even
frustrating.
If you do slotted star, it's like just root level elements.
Yeah, you kind of gotta like sense it. You have a third sense of like what they might put into that slot. But they are a really powerful feature. It's really cool to be able to like move the markup around in that way. And I sort of wish it was available in Light DOM, not just in Shadow DOM. You have to use Shadow DOM in order to use the slots.
Yeah, it seems
I feel like it should be everywhere.
A bummer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of like grid area.
Yeah, I see what you mean here. I'm glad you pointed this out, though. So you can, like, if you wanted to use you have an input right on Nord, and I know this is like you did this a long time ago. We're not talking about your current stuff, so sorry to make you dwell in the past here. But there's like Nord. Yeah, nice. Nord-input, right? And there's nothing inside of it. But you're saying there could be, though. Like if you want to override the label, you could provide your own label inside of it and then say slot equals label, and it will replace the label as it's being used. That is really cool.
There's a bunch of that rules. In drop down, there's like a bunch of different like options, and all those options are actually are snapshot tests. I'm showing too many cards now of
nice.
Like the secrets of it. They're like snapshot tests, and they were the actual things to be able to test against. So we would have this like cyclical experience of so let me go off piece because I like this experience that we had at Nord or Nord Health, is that somebody would come along and say, I want a drop down that does this, and we go, well, the drop down doesn't do that out of the box, but if we were to use these components together, you'd be able to do it. And we would click on edit in CodePen. We would edit the component example. We would create that and produce like a final like example, share that with the developer, and they go, oh, awesome, this is great. And then we go, I wonder if others want this in the design system. We would take that code, put it into an example, and then merge it back into the design system like resources. Those like examples actually reside next to the components themselves, and then that would become a snapshot test, and that would become extra documentation, and it would become like, you know, like almost like a Katamari, the game Katamari, where the design system's kind of growing from like sticking all these like extra features and experiences together into one big like resource.
Did you find like just in any of your design system work, like, do the requests stop coming, or is it like a Katamari, like infinite growth machine? Like, are you going to always end up with like 72,000 components in your design system if it lives forever?
I don't know, because I haven't gotten there yet. Now you're scaring me on a preemptive like future of like hundreds and hundreds of components.
I was just thinking about it today. That's all. I just was like, if this happens, what does that mean? So mostly cards. I'm thinking about cards. Yeah.
How many cards would they like?
Yeah.
A deck?
Like deck 52? Yeah, Balatro. It's just 120 jokers.
Yeah, you need the
Hanged
Man.
Solitaire.
Wow.
But I guess there is like a risk of that future of accumulation of components in your design system. But I think if there's a keen group of people that are using your design system and they want to become like almost like advocates, a bit like how product companies evolve, where they find advocates in their like audience and use that to help grow the audience of that design system. In this case, it would be a design system, and then that permeates into the rest of the company. So it's almost like that was kind of a cheat of mine of like being an advocate for a couple of years at various companies, is that I have that experience of talking to developers and getting them on board with ideas and features within like a certain thing, and that incorporates back into my design system work, is the sharing experience of using it and the features of it.
Nice.
I have another question for y'all about some of this. Like, you can imagine like a progress component, right? Like, or whatever. It's just, it takes one attribute that's like 72, and then it's 72% full or something. You're trying to show it to somebody. You can imagine shipping that. That's great, because now I would think most like state management is, or maybe there's none inside these design system components. Like, they don't deal with that. Their state is the attributes that you put on them. So progress equals 72. That's the state of it. It's 72% full. And if you're writing in React, you can manage it however you'd like. Vue has a different opinion about state or whatever. It doesn't matter. State is attributes for the web components. Can you always get away with that? And then not just state, but like events too. And it looks like there is a kind of a nice and good way to handle this that hasn't been clear to me in the past, but because of the quality of this design system, I'm learning a little bit. Imagine the notification one then too, a notification just being like a, horizontal card looking thing. But crucially, it has a little X on it. And the X means go away notification. So does the notification component, when you click that X, does it like delete itself off the page or what? And it looks like I'm having some internet trouble. Ugh.
Well, I'll answer that question. I don't know. I don't know the best angle to take that, like what to do, because, you could compare it to like the dialogue element and like how that behaves with a button and like opening it and dismissing it. We tend to like follow like, when we worked on Node, like we tend to follow the APIs that are available in the browser. You'll see a lot of like event listeners, and they're just like normal event listeners. They're not anything kind of wildly unique. We would try and keep akin to that because performance reasons, we're not recreating the wheel, and two, it's expected. So like developers see that and go, oh, well, that's just an event listener. I know all the APIs for that. I know to get the target and like all the other bits of it. It's a known thing. They can kind of see that from just working with HTML regularly. But I feel like I'm diverging from the question now. I'm like dodging it like a politician.
No, but
like, how would you do
it
it?
seems to me that
You're like,
they're documented. So if you were, it looks like how it was designed is that if you click that X button, all it's going to do is emit an event, and it looks like the event is called dismiss, and then you would deal with that. Whoever's using it would deal with that, not the component itself, but you have something to link into. So if your view state is saying there's 3 notifications on the page, it's dealing with like listening for them being closed. I guess I just bring it up because it's confusing to me how it's like, sure, these frameworks support web components fine, but they still need to talk to each other. The way that you bind events to elements is still super different between a web component and how the framework does it. So like I have that little X, I know how to bind an onClick to it in React. You put onClick on the element, but I don't know that that's what you do in a web component. It's probably not. In fact, I don't want to really think about it in the web component. I just kind of want to like listen for the events that happen on it and then react on the parent. And it looks like that's just exactly what's happening here. It's just a normal DOM event that gets shot out from it. There's a dismiss event, and then I take that dismiss event and be like, oh, I'm going to set state, and the state will re-render, and then the notification won't be there anymore. Cool. Now, I mean, you might run into stuff like, your example of a notification on this is it fades away, and fading away is harder when you just rip it out of the DOM and all that. But hey, we got Vue transitions now, so.
you could do. I mean, you could do it either way, really. Like in my thought, like you could have it hide itself. I think for me, what gets tricky is like you need something to like remove it from the state. Like if you have 100 notifications or whatever, like how do you just pop it off the queue? And that should probably be managed by the parent, right? Like the
right.
And so then you have like, so then that situation, like I do think like it just saying a dismiss for this ID or whatever is probably rad. And then the parent can clean it up. But
you're going to
I would
get
think-
like a couple of, in a design system that's like that powerful, you're going to get a couple of components in there that kind of do mystery and like sleight of hand, like portal type stuff where they're like throwing things
Right.
around the page, and I think that's okay because we can't, you know, can't create things like the power of like top layer and stuff like that. We need to reproduce those things or like
Yeah.
polyfill for like more powerful features that are yet to be available or need that level of complexity, and it's just like the theoretical slot or an empty space to be able to do that stuff.
But to make a good design system, you probably need to roll with some pretty strong opinions, I would think. You can't just be like, oh, this component, this deals with all its own state internally, but this other component, it doesn't at all. I'd be like, no, that's not going to work. It'd probably be better in quality to have hardline opinions on that, or as hard as you can. Anyway, I'm also curious about how much else is in a design system that's not just because I don't know, we're all pretty codey, right? We like have our little mono repos and we build our things, and that's the world we live in. But we also know that these things are used by lots of different people with lots of different skill sets and all that. And where I'm headed with this is Figma, I guess, in that this one, and I know Dave dealt with Figma APIs for a lot too much of his life probably, and
Still,
things like
yeah.
that. What if, you know, like if we have Figma at CodePen, but it's got a decent representation of our components in there, but it's not really the source of truth, and it's not super up to date, and we just don't treat it like that. It's a little bit more like, I don't know, just throw some crap together and we'll deal with it when we can. That's probably not going to fly in a real bigger design system world, to the point of like, how do you keep these things in sync? How do you think about it? What's the source of truth and what's not? And it just scares me. It feels like it more than doubles the complexity of a design system if you know that there's got to be like this like one-to-one parity between a design system and a design tool. Thoughts?
You go, Dave. You go.
Oh, I think it's hard. I have been working on this token system for a bit, and I was trying to explain like, hey, there's like layers of tokens, like products can change this token if they need to, and then this is like the default, and then this other layer is for like legacy, applications with like legacy tokens or whatever. And somebody was like, what? Why would you ever need like two tokens? Couldn't they just set the token like my element token name blue, And it's like, oh yeah, you totally could, unless like two things are using the blue and you only wanted to change one, or what, you'd have to like scope it, but I was like, oh, but these all work in Figma too. Like, and that's where like the light bulb I think went off, was just this idea of like, oh, our token system is actually one-to-one with Figma. And so when a designer says, I want to use whatever Blue 500, we have the same Blue 500, and Blue 500 is like pretty easy. But when you're into like the control link accessible blue or whatever, like that's where it's like super valuable to have like that level of like specificity, and so you're not just using any blue that somebody decides to chuck on their site. You're using like a specific blue that has to be there or whatever.
That level of like parity between the design and the code. I get a bit scared about having that wiring between the two, because design files and Figma are just naturally very free flowing, and things can move, and there's no like real concept of history unless you build extra stuff into it or connect it to other things. Whereas code's very regimented, you get that, and I've heard you say this before, Chris, like the why. You get like a why next to every change and everything that you did, and it makes sense on like that history, where you don't kind of get that with design files. Not to throw shade or anything, but like it's just the nature of those two things. But having the the parity between the two, whether that be manual. Well, that's how we did it at Nord. We ended up being quite manual, but the team was very close, and we could take on that load. Forgive me, I'm going to mention like tools like ZeroHeight can actually wire those things up, so your design files do connect directly to your code packages, and you could submit those changes as effectively a pull request to say all of these tokens have changed, get that into the production, or to get that into the design system through a pull request and merge that in and compile it and distribute it. Like, you get that workflow where designers are kind of coding without them even knowing. Well, they would. I hope they know, because they'd be deploying that color change like globally without their awareness.
No, that aspect of Figma is cool and awful. Like, is, it can just change, and the way how variables exist in Figma and how they exist in probably your code are different, and that's like in Figma, it's literally like variable ID 00123455, or something like that. And so if you change the name of a variable, doesn't matter. But if you change the name of a variable in CSS, it super matters. So just changing the name in Figma, it's like, yeah, I'll propagate that to every file that's ever used this variable 000123. I'll fix that for you. But like, if you change whatever color red 500 to color red 9000, that breaks everything. So it's a tough, that's a tough one. So we're discovering. So there's just this like, rules. I don't know. I guess it's sort of like in-house versus out of house too, like open technologies versus Figma's technology, but they can build it however they want.
Like when you change a -- variable where you're declaring it, do you want your IDE to help you with that, or do you like intentionally not want help with that?
Oh, like you want me to fix every variable in every file? That'd be interesting.
Oh, like a variable migration.
You can do it yourself with the find and replace across your code base. But
yeah.
I just was thinking it because yesterday I was working on some code, and I should have committed earlier, but I had about 7 changed files maybe. And then I must have done something in the sidebar where I dragged a folder onto another folder and it moved it. And when you move a file in VS Code is just like, I got you, bro. I'm going to update every import path for that stuff across the whole code base. And it changed like 60 files as import paths, So now I have 67 changed files, and I had to look at each one and be like, oh, that's just one of those import ones. I got to change because, even moving the folder back, it didn't fix it quite right, Yeah. And then I discarded one of the files that I was working on too, because it both changed the imports and the code. And it was I was battling a tricky TypeScript thing that I could, oh God. And I got it like 92% right, but it was still broken.
You need a little like heat thing in the corner, or like a boost, like in a video game where it's getting hotter and hotter, and like you really need to bank this stuff before you make a hasty change.
Dude, that's an awesome plugin. Just so
that would be cool.
How like on fire you're getting, like how much?
This is fine.
Yeah,
if it's that's great. Yeah. Just a little dog in the house working, and then just more fire shows up as you start changing stuff. That's great.
It got me. It was this one where, if you have an array in TypeScript, and like the first thing is like an object, and the second thing is just Boolean or something. I type it that way, but then the type is like the inferred type for that is that it's an array. And one of the things is an object and one of the things is Boolean in any order, which I feel like is like a weird assumption, because you're like, arrays are ordered, aren't they? But so in order to tell it, I care about the order, you have to do that like as const at the end of it. And that means I care about the order. It's like a weird way to declare that you care about the order of an array, I feel like, but that's how you do it. Speaking
of like tokens and variables and stuff like that, there's this cool trick that I learned from Nick when working on Nord is we were putting like tokens or variables inside of each component. And like on one level, that's really useful because you could then remap the variables to suit like what they are used inside of like a button or an input or something like that. But the extra power is, say you have a component that changes on hover or on focus, that the font color changes and the border changes. So on hover, you're going to have to change both of those properties. But if you do it with a custom property, you can just change the custom property on the hover and it does all of it. And we use that a numerous amount of times to save ourselves having to rewrite all of that CSS on like the hover state or on the focus state or on whatever. You just say, look, in this context, this variable means this now. This is red because it's an error, or this is green because it's valid, and it's really handy because you're not like rewriting chunks of code and like causing just possibility of error, like prone to error by saying, oh well, I forgot to put the border on there and I forgot to change the thickness or stuff like that. Box shadow is one of them.
Background color or something like that. Like,
box shadow is the annoying one because I always thought box shadow should have a longhand version. Box shadow is just always shorthand. If you see what I mean, it's got the offset and the blur.
Box shadow
and the
X,
size.
box shadow Y.
Yeah, I would really
blur.
like that as like a separate thing to just be able to change the color. But you can build that in by just making a custom property and say, right, box shadow color changes to this, and not rewrite all the offset and pixel stuff.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, we have that in a few places, and it's like there's a clear elegance to it. It's like, what's happening in this file? And you're just like, oh, they're just updating the background color, host hover background color red. Oh, okay. You're like, there, that's easier. You're like, it's not this huge mystery to figure out what's all changing. You're just like,
yeah,
it's these three properties over and over and over. Background, border, color. Background, border, color.
Big fish, little fish, cardboard box.
Yes.
Do you know that one? Oh, that's like the.
But it's great.
It's like
I'm like
it's
nodding
like
my
a
head
dance
like,
move.
yeah, David.
That's like a dance move. Maybe that's local to like UK. So you say, and this will have to be in the video. Big fish, little fish, cardboard box. Like.
Okay, and then
Okay, like Google it.
Chris
The
Enns,
Brits
can you
know.
put some really sick drum and bass over that?
Yeah,
Jungle?
please,
Yeah,
yeah.
there? Yeah, okay. Boo, something. Yeah.
Perfect.
Cardboard box, right? Okay. Perfect. Remix, go. There, perfect. Well, cool. I think we are at time here, so we will have to shut it down. Boo. But thank you, David, for coming on the show and talking about the stuff you're doing and web components and all that. For people who aren't following you and giving you money, how can they do that?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me onto the show. I've been a fan for like years and years. This is my favorite podcast. I can say that with confidence. I listened to it on the way home from dropping the girl off from nursery, and it's great. So thank you. And yeah, you can go to my website, darn.es. There's also designsystems.wtf that I occasionally write on there. But yeah, you don't need to give me money. I've put a sponsorship on the Design Systems WTF blog if they want to help me
there you go.
pay for the hosting, but I don't need it.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. And so we'll have to have you on again. Thank you, dear listener, for downloading this in your podcatcher choice. Be sure to shard it up. Join us in the Discord, patreon.com/shoptalkshow. And Chris, I got outsourced at the beginning of the show. I think you're getting outsourced here at the end. Are you ready?
ShopTalkShow.com